Alright, hello class. I'm going to be explaining how seating simulation works, so sit tight. Now, for those of you who have been, who watched my last video, you'll know that my whiteboard is now in my room, so things are definitely looking up this time. So seating simulations, right, how does that work? Well, the first thing we start with is we get like a standard deviation and a mean estimate for each state, right? So for each state, like let's say Michigan, right? We have Michigan. Please work, marker. Nope, this marker's dead. Michigan, right? We're gonna have the mean, which is gonna be like our estimate at the percentage of people of like a two-party vote that's gonna go to one candidate. So let's say our mean is 57, right? 57%, so whatever, 57 or 0.57. That would mean that like 57% of the two-party vote would go to Biden. And we would have the standard deviation, right? The standard deviation is, you guys know, it's just how variable our guess is, right? So if our standard deviation could be, 0.5%, right? So we could expect shifts of around like maybe up to 1% when, unlike in our majority of our guesses. So once we have these two numbers for each state, the mean and the standard deviation, we're gonna use this later. The next thing we're gonna do is calculate our correlation matrix, right? Which is how we're gonna be relating each state to the other. So each state has its own set of demographics, right? So Michigan, that we're picking actually in the form that you're probably watching this video from. So each state has like, I don't know which ones we're gonna end up voting, but probably like, percent Latino, percent white, percent college, whatever. And what we're gonna do is for each state, we're gonna run a regression basically comparing how similar the two states are. So Texas and New Mexico, and of course it varies from like 0 to 1, right? So Texas and New Mexico might be like 70% similar, but Texas and Massachusetts might be, like 20% similar or something like that. So this number is basically just going to tell us how related are these two states to each other. So right now we basically have the mean and standard deviation for each state, and we have how related they are, right? Each state to every other state. So for DC, or for any state really, we would pick it, and we would have 50 numbers related to it saying how closely related it is to every other state. So for Michigan, we would have like Wisconsin, Arizona, whatever. So those are our first two steps, right? Then what we're going to do next is pick, and this is the confusing part, we pick a subset of states, but the subset can just be size 1, right? Which I think is what is confusing about our description there. So we could just pick one state in this example, and that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to pick one state to illustrate the point. So let's say we pick Michigan, right? What we're going to do is that we're going to create the normal distribution described by this mean and standard deviation. So there we go, a neat little bell curve with 57%, right, as its mean. And the standard deviation is 0.5%, like we mentioned here. So, right, we're going to make this normal distribution, and then what we're going to do is we're going to pick a number randomly from it. So let's say we pick here, right? So then this number would be 57.5, because it's like basically just one standard deviation away from the mean. And we're going to say, okay, this is our random guess for what Biden gets. Like, let's say Biden gets this amount. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to find the difference between this random number that we guessed and the mean. So in this case, the state shifted 0.5% towards Biden, right? In this example, because we got 57.5 versus 57. So we have, so we find the difference at 0.5% towards Biden. What we're going to do with this number, right, is that we're going to multiply it by the relationship that we found for each other state, right? So if we see that Michigan got 0.5% for Biden, and Michigan is 0.7, like the correlation between Michigan and Wisconsin is like 0.7, we would multiply 0.5 times its relationship, which would be 0.7, to get, like a new number that's smaller than 0.5, and we would apply that shift. Okay, this is like almost sideways now. We would apply that shift to the mean of the other state. So in this case, I said Wisconsin, right? So Wisconsin's mean, let's say Wisconsin is polling our best guess, the mean is 50, right? 50%. We would add this shift, so 0.7 times 0.5, and make an entirely new normal distribution from this new guess for let's say, did I say Wisconsin, right? So that would be a new mean, and then we'd pick a random number there. And we do that for every other state, seeing how the initial guess that we had, the 0.5% shift towards Biden in our original state, which was Michigan, affects Wisconsin, Arizona, Texas, all other states, right? So that's basically the like how our model works, right? We pick an initial state, we find the difference between the guess and the mean, and that like difference, that shift, we apply it to all other states, varying on how similar they are. So, Michigan might have a big shift, but if we were to apply this shift to Arizona or let's say Texas, we might see that it might have like no effect, or even they might have a negative correlation. So if Biden does better in Michigan, he might do worse in Texas, maybe, which is something that we found when making our whole list of correlations. So, so then we do this to every state. We count up which states Biden won, which states Biden lost, and we have our simulated election results, right? Now, what do I like about this model? Well, I really like that we can like kind of figure out which states have a big impact on the election, right? So if we see that, let's say we figure out that whenever Pennsylvania goes like 0.5% from our prediction towards either candidate, that candidate wins the election like 99% of the time. That'd be super significant. That's also really cool. And it might not be a swing state that happens in. Maybe it's a state like Maryland, right? And if Biden doesn't do as well in Maryland as we project, while it might not change the results in Maryland, just because Maryland has like, I don't know, I'm just like making something up here, but maybe it has certain correlations with other states, it could be like a good indicator of how Biden's going to do in the general election. And if we're going to be doing live election coverage, which is what some people have been advocating, we could plug in state results live. So, I don't know which states come out first, which results come out first, but we could plug those in as they come out and give like a shifting view of the election forecast. I think that'd be super cool. And of course, as I said before, we're going to be identifying kind of like key states that I don't think I've seen any other website do. So, and then also, of course, we can pick more than one state, I said. Like, subset could be one, or it could be 3 or 4, or I don't know how many we're going to do, but we could pick a certain number of states and see how the results from that certain number that we pick affect all others. So we could pick Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, assume that they're independent of each other, and apply the shift for each one to all other states. There was something else that I wanted to say. I think it left me. So, yeah, this is a good summary of our model. Oh, I remember. The con for this model is that it doesn't allow for an examination of like individual demographics, and it's also a lot more volatile. So in this model, we can't accurately represent what would happen if Biden loses, the black vote, for instance. But I don't think that's a big problem because people are so much more complicated than just like their one demographic. So it's very unlikely that we're gonna see just a single group of people that, as we define them, just vote in a very strict direction. That rarely happens. So I don't see a big problem with that aspect. But this model definitely is a lot more volatile because we're picking just one state that then's going to have a big impact on the results from all other states. So we're giving that state a lot of weight, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how our model looks like in the end, how the results are. And yeah, this video is already long enough, so without further ado, that is this model. Yeah, bye. Have fun in class.